You just had Nintendo telling millions of gamers that they are not going to get a single penny of their Trump tariff refund. And that's even though that refunds could be worth billions of dollars, right? Instead, you got Nintendo telling Switch buyers that they just got what they bargained for. And that's despite the fact that research indicates that consumers broadly shouldered 43% of the burden from Trump's tariffs just in the first 7 months that they were in place. But also a key thing you should understand is while Nintendo, they're kind of getting the spotlight on this, they are not the only multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that's refusing to give their buyers a fair share of the tariff refunds. Right? You've got others receiving some projected millions or billions of dollars in government rebates, and they're keeping 100% of the money. Because quick little recap if you don't remember, back in February, the Supreme Court struck down Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs that he imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. And so as a result, companies that had been impacted by those taxes were like, game on. They lined up to sue the administration and get a chunk of the $160 billion refund pot. And then when Nintendo joined in, you had a group of gamers filing a class action lawsuit claiming that because they had raised the prices to address the tariffs, they should pass the rebates on to consumers who paid those higher prices. And the argument they put out is that the company was basically just double dipping. They had already been compensated for the trade taxes when customers paid the higher costs, so collecting a rebate would mean they're effectively getting paid twice, right? And the timing here is also very significant. The same day that you had Trump rolling out those sweeping tariffs, right, in April of 2025, Nintendo announced the launch of its Switch 2 with a $449 price tag, nearly 50% more than the original Switch. But then, a few days later, you had the company delaying pre-orders for the new product, saying that they needed to assess the potential impact of tariffs and other conditions. And while they ultimately decided to keep the Switch 2 pricing, they did increase prices for the original Switch consoles by $30 to $50 and added $5 to $10 to prices of various Switch 2 accessories. And one of the big things to point out is that Nintendo, they did confirm back in May that they were raising the price of the Switch 2 to $499. But they argued that it actually had nothing to do with the tariffs, and it's widely speculated that the move was driven by surging prices of computer components. And in their press release announcing the initial increases last year, the company did not explicitly cite the tariffs, instead just saying that the move was necessary due to changes in market conditions. And while very notably, it's unclear right now how much money Nintendo is entitled to, you have some outlets reporting that businesses like Nintendo, they saw duty bills of around $1 billion just per quarter. So we could be talking about several $billion here just for Nintendo. But they also want to keep all of it. In fact, they are trying to get this case thrown out altogether, arguing in a motion to dismiss. The common thread among plaintiffs' claims is that it is somehow unfair that Nintendo has not retroactively adjusted its prices for completed sales in response to the outcome of the tariff litigation. But that is not how commercial transactions work. And arguing with the company, they set a price for each good, and consumers, quote, decided whether that price was worth paying, and added, those who bought Nintendo's products received exactly what they bargained and paid for, a console, game, and/or accessory at a price to which both parties agreed. And so they claim, they are entitled to a refund, but their customers are not entitled to a refund just because the legal landscape's now changed. Also beyond that, you've got the company arguing that it raised prices based on a number of things, including increased costs of memory, labor, and shipping. And on top of that, they say they didn't actually impose the full cost of the tariffs on their goods. Instead, claiming that they just made modest and selective price adjustments and chose to just absorb the trade fees on some of their most popular products. But unsurprisingly, after hearing and seeing all that, you've had just a lot of people online completely pissed off, calling the company greedy and accusing them of double dipping. You also had others pointing out what they saw as clear hypocrisy in Nintendo's you bought what you paid for logic, with one user writing, Nintendo also received exactly what they bought, shipped, and sold knowing tariffs would affect it, so no refunds for them. You also had others arguing that if Nintendo doesn't do direct rebates, it should at least still offer some kind of credit or goodwill perk. And that, as you had a lot of people saying, the company can't have it both ways, saying that it's unfair for them to keep the prices high if they're pocketing the whole refund. Saying, hey, this whole refund business, let's put that to a side for a second. What about the prices that you increased? Why are they still there? On the other side, in addition to people saying, it's unclear if they've actually received a rebate yet, you got a number of people echoing Nintendo's claim that customers, they're just not entitled to a refund because they made the decision to buy the upcharged products. Right, and with that, arguing that the company isn't double dipping because they needed the money to cover the portion of the tariffs that they absorbed, with others also questioning how it would even be logistically possible for the company to send out rebates. And then with that, you also had a number of people saying this is not Nintendo's fault, it's Trump's fault, he's the one to blame. But at the end of the day, he imposed these harmful illegal duties. And while of course, I'd love to know your opinions and thoughts on all this, I do feel like it's important to note that it is not just Nintendo. They are far from the only one here. I mean, you've got Walmart by far being the biggest beneficiary of this pool. They're projected to get $10.2 billion. Meanwhile, you've got Target and Apple also pursuing between $2 and $3 billion respectively. Ford and Nike, they're asking for around $1 billion. And then you got plenty of others hoping to receive hundreds of millions. And what you've had are some corporations saying that they're going to pass their refunds off to customers, at least in some way, shape, or form. FedEx, DHL, and UPS, they've all announced that they're going to repay shippers and customers for the trade fees that they were charged. Other companies, including Walmart and Costco, they've also said that they're going to indirectly pass their rebates down to consumers by lowering prices and or offering membership perks. But then really, the vast majority of these other companies that you have, they've either said that they're going to keep all the money for themselves or they've just kind of stayed silent. silent. They've shut up. And actually, according to reports, the plaintiffs' firms have filed more than 100 consumer class action lawsuits against businesses that are seeking tariff rebates after raising their prices. And while you're seeing, a bunch of different allegations, they do generally just hit on kind of the same overarching theme of the Nintendo challenge. The argument that you have these massive companies pocketing refunds and still keeping prices high while not giving any savings to consumers. And then on the other side, you have a lot of these companies sitting back with kind of the same arguments that Nintendo's made. And as far as the economists, many of them just really don't expect companies that receive these rebates to lower their prices back down. Though you have a number of them saying that is at least in part because they need money to offset inflation caused by both the Iran war and the many other non-reciprocal tariffs that Trump put in place and weren't struck down by the Supreme Court. Though a thing I do need to point out and stress is that we are already seeing reports that some of these companies, they may in fact be using these rebates to just supercharge their corporate earnings and pad their own pockets. Regardless of who's in the right, you have legal experts saying that the real crux of the legal argument, it comes down to that claim that consumers voluntarily agreed to pay for the higher prices for the goods that they receive. And as with all other voluntary purchases, businesses don't have to give money back every time their costs go down. And then actually to that point, you've had many noting that the federal consumer protection laws generally just do not require businesses to pass government-issued rebates to retail buyers. But also you've got cases challenging what happens to refunds on different grounds, with some claiming unjust enrichment, while others are bringing suits in states that have stronger consumer protections. And then of course, at the end of the day, just this happening and people being aware of it, it might affect consumer behaviors, but it also might not. But as we wait to see what happens next, that is where I'm gonna leave it. But one, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you like these little dives. Two, you've actually got more news you need to know on the Philip DeFranco show I released just before this. Click or tap to watch that. I love yo faces, and I'll see you next time.